Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life Was Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the Holyoke Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites throughout communities in the state of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, as well as Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the Coolidge Bridge, located in Northampton, Mass. So, where was the bridge put in place, or when was the bridge put in place?
In 1939, it was built up and dedicated October 12th of that year. Has a fifth bridge at that location. So there's been bridges there since colonial days. All right, we're also going to talk about the views from this beautiful bridge and why it's so important to this very, very narrow area and also important for the greater regional area. And then, who is this guy Coolidge? Believe it or not, people might not know who that person is. All right, now it was put in place there under a fund from the federal government, and it's called the Hayden Cartwright Act, to get infrastructure improvements across the United States. And it's built on a 5-span bridge, and so it has the abutments on both sides, and the middle piers, it has 4 of those. And it's a gorgeous thing. It has plaques on both ends and on both sides. So there's 4 plaques on there. And there used to be big entrance columns where you can get down into the bridge below. They've been narrowed up on one side because the bridge was built with 3 lanes. Now has about 20 years ago, it has 4 lanes. And that you have to narrow a few things up, including the sidewalks on both sides. And it's still a gorgeous place. And yes, there's sidewalks to walk across on both sides. Next.
What are some of the views you can get?
Okay, so you got views in both directions, including towards the ranges. You got views of both, especially the Mount Holyoke range, with its summit house on top of one of the mountains. And that range, of course, includes Norwottuck, Mount Holyoke, Seven Sisters, and Bear Mountain. And you got great views of the river and the meanders towards the right, south, and it's very wide at that point. Another is Mount Tom range is visible if you walk more towards the Hadley end. And there, of course, you can see Mount Norwottuck. And just barely in the winter, you can see, when there's no tree leaves around, you can see the Mount Tom, the peak. Also, on the other sidewalk, that looking to the Connecticut River as it goes towards the north, you get a view of the Connecticut Railroad Bridge, which has been converted over to a pedestrian bridge. And there, you get to see how shallow the water gets. But there's an island in the middle that you can see. And also below you is going to be a river access point. And so you get great sights on both sides. And also you get great sights from the railroad bridge itself. And you can take that at a slower pace.
And really quick before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for more inquiries or for private tours, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun, educational outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, how is the bridge a keystone to the area?
All right, if you talk about the wider area and the regional area, it's important because Northampton has been the capital of Western Massachusetts area, and it's still the capital of Hampshire County at this point. Lots of people go in Northampton during the daytime. The daytime population of Northampton might reach up to 70,000 people. And then Hadley and then Amherst, going the other way, have grown and grown. Hadley has got very commercialized, and Amherst, of course, has colleges galore, including the very large University of Massachusetts. So it's very important, and it ties right into Interstate 91 in Northampton. Now, the narrow region, right in this region is a Greenway State Park for the Connecticut River. This is one of 8 access points along the river that are now part of State Park, and it's easy to get in with your kayak or canoe, so forth, because they have a boat access below. They also have the Norwottuck rail trail bike path and pedestrian path, and they use for that the Connecticut River Railroad Line Bridge. So that's very important. They extended their Norwottuck into downtown Northampton and up to Look Park, and then also over to East Hampton. And so you can now bike from East Hampton and Look Park all the way up to the outskirts of Belchtown itself. And lastly, it's just a nice place to congregate because there's so much going on. If you love athletics, recreation, this is a great place. Boats, bikes, hikers are here galore. In the center of the Connecticut Greenway State Park is right up the road.
And who is Calvin Coolidge?
Calvin Coolidge is one of your presidents. He was the president from 1923 to March of 1929. He served for about 5 years and about 10 months. And he could have served another term, but I think he was quite tired of the process. He would end up dying about 6 years after he left his presidency. He was the mayor of Northampton for a long time. He was the governor of Massachusetts for a while. And he lived most of his life in Northampton. He was born up in Plymouth Notch, Vermont, but he was a Republican Party president, believed in frugality, believed in a balanced budget. And some people love him and some people don't love him. They think that his ways with the budget might have caused the Great Depression. I think he's a fine person, and there is now a presidential library in the Forbes Library of Northampton. You can visit there and learn a great deal about his life and his wonderful wife, and hopefully you can visit there too. Thank you.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can check out a large selection of our other podcasts on his website. Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life is Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Coleman. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites throughout the communities in Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and historical houses within each community. Railroad Bridge, located in Northampton, Mass. So tell us about the Railroad Bridge.
Yes, today we're going to talk about this wonderful railroad bridge because it does so many jobs, and it did a lot of different jobs in the past. And so, let me tell you, we're going to talk about what it's turned into, and the great views it has, and what should be done with it still. So, the railroad bridge itself is from the year 1887, and it was made by company Hawkins and Thompson. And that company there is a company that was very common in making iron structures like this one. They made a lot of railroad bridges and a lot of bridges around Massachusetts. Right, now this bridge, sure, most times called Connecticut River Railroad Bridge, but it's also been known as the Massachusetts Central Railroad Bridge because of who owned it next, and then who owned it next? The Boston and Maine Railroad Bridge. The Boston and Maine owned it next. And it's the railroad bridge over the Connecticut River. So they had so many railroad bridges. And so it's still a great bridge, even though it's long past its railroad carrying abilities and needs. It's been turned into something wonderful, and we'll talk about that next.
And what has the bridge been turned into?
A wonderful thing. It's been turned into a pedestrian bridge that complements greatly the Calvin Coolidge Bridge, which is a nearby car bridge. And so this bridge, about 40 years ago, had its rail bed changed over to a pedestrian walkway. And they, of course, made it safe where it needed to be made safe. And now it's part of a bike path, the Norwottuck bike path. And it's also with great views. And also, it's right at a very important place in Northampton. It's right on the Connecticut River, of course, but there's a Greenway State Park, the Connecticut River Greenway State Park, one of 8 on the Connecticut River, Massachusetts, has its biggest station here, and you can use it as a kayak, canoe, or small boat put-in. And the headquarters is right up to Damon Road for the whole Greenway State Park. Also, there's down below, there's near the boat launch, there's the University of Massachusetts rowboat launch. And also there's a big deck down there. And that whole system down there is called the Elway Recreation Center. So this location has so much going on, a bike path with the Snake Bridge, a boat put in, and then in general just a recreation area for people to stay and picnic if they want. Most people go there to walk and run, some bike riding. And you don't have to go over the Calvin Coolidge Bridge anymore on your bike or walking. For the last 40 years, you have this wonderful option. But still, both sides of Calvin Coolidge Bridge have sidewalks in it.
And really quick before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, for more information or to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, and his tours make for fun, educational, outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, the Connecticut River Railroad Bridge has great news. Can you tell us about it?
Okay. The bridge itself has exceptional views in both directions. Looking towards the north, where the Connecticut River flows from, you get to see Hatfields and a lot of Northampton. You got an island right in the middle there. The water slows down drastically there, and it's also very shallow. So you don't see the power boats go by the Calvin Coolidge Bridge. They only go by downstream from it. And it's a very nice bridge, but it doesn't equal the southern bridge. The southern view from this bridge is exceptional. You get to see not only the Calvin Coolidge Bridge, you also get to see the Mount Holyoke range. The mountain range is like 11 miles long, and it's very nice to look at. And it's not quite as good a view as the Calvin Coolidge Bridge does, especially on its southern reach, which doesn't have anything in its way, but at least it's still very nice to look at.
And should there be any changes to the bridge?
One bridge change, I can see it right away. They might have painted it 40 years ago, but it needs a new paint job. It's starting to look rusty on the top again, and it deserves to look a natural color, but a good sharp color. And that would be great. And I'm sure they expect it because it is a bridge. The Massachusetts government is in charge of inspection of all bridges in Massachusetts. So they probably look at it in its bunches. But mostly I'm thinking about a paint job so it looks better from the Calvin Coolidge Bridge and looks better when you're walking over it. a nice pastel color or a nice natural color might be great. And otherwise, it's a great place to bring your family and try everything out. You can go on this rail bed all the way into Northampton Public Park, and if you turn left, you can go into East Hampton to its border with Southampton. And if you go the Hadley direction, this rail trail is exceptional. It goes all the way up to the edge of Belchtown. So there's a lot to see around this area. Do every form of recreation that you typically do on your own, such as walk, bike, run, kayak, canoe. You can do it right out of this place. In fact, about 20 years ago, I think I did like 3 of those in one day from this one spot. So it's a great place to go. Thank you.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can check out a large selection of podcasts on his website. Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life is Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites throughout the communities of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the Norwottuck Rail Trail in Northampton, Mass. So, tell us about the Norwottuck Trail.
It's called the Norwottuck Trail. The Norwottuck Trail is very important because it ties together, for pedestrians and bicycle riders, a lot of the busy streets of Northampton, Amherst, Hadley, and leads right into Belchtown. So it's a trail that's been around about 40 years. It's entirely paved with tar. It has a nice line down the middle, most of it, so that it separates 2 lanes. And it's wide enough for a lot of bicycles to go on at once and pass each other safely. Right, it's part of the Massachusetts Central Rail Trail, and it's one of those branches, and we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about some of the major highlights on this wonderful rail trail and some of its exit points along the way. Now, I've been on it many times, and you could really very easily pick up on where it is when you're driving through Amherst or Hadley, because it dominates a lot of the intersections, and that's great. It gets people off the road, and since Northampton, South Hadley, and Amherst are college university towns, this is a great way for younger people to get around very quickly.
And is it part of the Mass Central Rail Trail? Tell us about the other branches.
Okay, it's part of that Mass Central Trail, and the other branches happen to be the Northampton branch, which leads up to Leeds, a village within Northampton. It goes by the Look Park, and it goes through downtown. There's only one branch that's on the sidewalk, and all the rest is on a separate rail bed. There's also a branch that leads from downtown Northampton, goes along in the direction of East Hampton, and it goes into East Hampton, the Manhattan branch. And once it gets onto an old rail bed there, it goes through all of East Hampton. So it's a very long system of trails. All these trails, you could ride them in one day if you're a good rider. There might be up to almost 20 miles worth of rail bed trails, all connected together. Now, when East Hampton Trail, the Manhattan Trail, gets to Southampton, it ends there. And that's too bad, because after Southampton is Westfield. And in Westfield, you can pick up another rail trail, which goes into Southwick, which goes into Connecticut. And that rail trail is very close to the former Hampshire-Hamden Farmington Canal. So, and that portion is incredibly long. And so you have these almost connected. And with little side branches on roads, which are not bike paths or rail trails, but rather bike lanes, you can get along into a lot of the Pioneer Valley very, very easily.
And really quick before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for other inquiries or for private tours, you can email him directly at bobcat4214 capital B at yahoo.com. And his tours are fun, educational, outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, what are some of the highlights of the
rail trail? Has many highlights along it. One highlight is the railroad bridge over the Connecticut River, which connects the Northampton bike trail to the Norwottuck branch that goes through Hadley. And that's a beautiful dedicated bridge only used for the bike path itself. So they fixed it up, made it safe, and there you go, a great use for an old railroad bridge that was not being used very much. All right, then there's segments that go behind the Mountain Farms Mall in Hadley, and that's wonderful. Now throughout in Hadley, you could get a great view of the Mount Tom Range and the Mount Holyoke Ranges, and that's a great highlight because you get not only the great bicycle ride or walk, but you get to go right into the greatest viewscape in Hampshire County. Now, then proceeds to go by the Amherst Golf Course and Amherst College, and there's a side trail off of the Manhattan that goes into the University of Massachusetts. It's called the Swift Connector to UMass, right? And I've been in that. It's swift. It's a nice trail that gets right in there quickly. Now there's a bike lane on 116 to get to Hampshire College, and the Norwottuck goes right through the Amherst College and heads off in the direction of the Fort River and the southeast section of Amherst, and then on to the Lawrence Station, which is easily picked up on Station Road, and then keeps going into the Belchtown area. Now the highlights there are great views of Mount Norwottuck itself, which is part of the Mount Holyoke Range, and the Mount Norwottuck is the highest mount on that particular mountain range.
And tell us about the access points.
Okay, you can get on this any place you want to. It crosses lots of streets, including some major streets, some secondary streets, and some tertiary streets are residential streets along the way. The biggest access point, of course, is Elwood Recreation Area, which is where the railroad bridge itself is, and it connects right into Northampton going the other way. All right, another major access point is the Hadley Depot. Along that section, you have an ice cream shop, which faces towards the bike path itself. And then another access point with a lot of parking is the Mountain Farms Mall and Hampshire Mall. And you can park your car in the back of the Hampshire Mall and get on here and either walk it or bicycle ride it. And there's some superb views from there. Now you can get on the UMass connector as you get into Amherst. It's very close to Route 116, and you can get on Route 116 itself, or at Amherst Street, and so forth. Then you can get on at Amherst College and Route 116, many entrance points along there. There's a major entrance point also at Fort River, which is toward the south of Amherst, and then Lawrence Station is a big access point with more parking. And it goes all the way into Belchtown at an access point called Warren Wright, which is a road, and there's more parking. Hopefully someday Belchtown will get approved to get money to get a bike path extension. And they've talked about it, and hopefully someday that will happen.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And of course, we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can check out a large selection of other podcasts on his website,